Okay, now it is 5 past. Thank you so much, James Taylor. I hear an echo. Thank you. I would like to welcome you all to the Digital Archaeology and Heritage Lab here at the King's Manor Department of Archaeology, University of York. I am absolutely so delighted to see so many people here, but also to share this project, which has been the brainchild, I believe, of several people involved in the department for quite a long time. And we have lots of guests here today from various European countries and that are brought together under the aegis of this project. So I am completely delighted to welcome Holly Wright to talk about this project. Clap for Holly.
Wow, thank you. Yes, so I'm going to be talking about, so I'm going to be talking about a project where literally we've just come over here on a break from our kickoff meeting. The official start date of the project was the 1st of October, so we've barely begun. So you're probably wondering, why on earth are we going to come over here and talk about a project that that's only just started? But part of the reason is the fact that we are so fortunate to have all of our partners coming to York for the kickoff meeting. So they're all here in the room with us. I work on lots of different international projects, and I get to go off and meet with people in other places, but it's been a really long time since we've been able to welcome people back to York. So I just wanted to welcome everybody, and thank you for all coming to the digital lunch. And it's thought we would take this opportunity to also come and see everyone in the department and have a chance to start a discussion, because part of the reason we're doing this all sort of from the beginning is because we want to facilitate discussion throughout this process. So I'm going to talk a little bit about TETRARCHS. There we go. So anyway, just a little bit of background in terms of how TETRARCHS got started. This was part of a quite a different funding call where through something that's called CHANCE, which stands for Collaboration of Humanities and Social Sciences in Europe. And it basically was a couple of networks came together to try to apply for funding from the European Commission. They received 10 million in funding. This is then being co-funded by different national funders. So it's a very strange funding model. But what they were trying to do was get at some very specific things, because I think for a long time, what we've seen is different kinds of grant calls that are very much focused on, that have to do with technology, being very much focused on the technology rather than the human experience. And I think they were trying to push back a little bit against that, which I think is something that we certainly viewed as being, this is exactly what we're interested in as well in terms of a call. So that was great. Not every European country decided to participate, but we did have a lot of wonderful partner countries to choose from when we were putting the group together. These are the countries that are with us today. So we have partners in Belgium, Lithuania, Slovenia, Sweden, and of course the UK. So what is TETRARCHS, Transforming Data Reuse in Archaeology? This very much came out of an idea that Sara, who those of you who know her from when she was a senior lecturer here in the department, a conversation we had waiting for a flight in Schiphol Airport about 6 years ago, at least. And it was something where, you know, the idea, we felt really strongly that it was a good idea and something that really needed to be done. And we actually applied twice to 2 other Horizon 2020 calls, but we didn't seem to be able to, I don't know if we were a little bit ahead of our time. I don't know what it was, but it just didn't, the reviewers didn't seem to sort of understand what we were trying to do. but it feels much more timely now. And we seem to have sort of hit a moment, and the fact that this room is full and we have so many people online makes me think that, yeah, we have arrived at the moment when this sort of work is exactly what we need to be doing. So the core of what TETRARCHS is meant to be is looking at what I've been referring to as the central tension. I work for the Archaeology Data Service, so I work for a digital archive, and our remit is to preserve archaeological data, cultural resources, but at the same time, Sara's frustration was the fact that she wanted to be able to use the data, the primary data that we are creating or making available, in ways that it just wasn't really designed for. It's designed to be used primarily by other archaeologists, and that's absolutely fine. But in terms of how do we actually push this so that it can be used in other ways. And I think we all certainly have seen in the current political climate that the way that we connect in compelling ways with other people, there has to be an emotional connection. There has to be something that isn't just, people are not so interested in facts necessarily, but if we can speak to people and they can connect with it, that makes a huge difference. So how can we think differently about how we're working with the data, but at the same time, how can we make that important connection that we really need to? At the same time, the FAIR guiding principles, which I assume most people have probably heard of, I hope, is something that's just sort of swept like wildfire through the research data community. And there are a set of principles, but generally, basically, data should be findable, it should be accessible, it should be interoperable, you should be able to cross-search over it, and it should be reusable. And I would say as an archive, we've spent probably the last, Julian, say at least 25 years working on making that data findable and accessible. A huge amount of progress has been made in the last 10 years. I would say we have a much better understanding of making data interoperable. But when we get to the end of the process, which is meant to be the thing we're all striving for, very little work has actually been done around making that data reusable. And the FAIR principle says we need to look at these things as equal. We can't do one or the other. We have to do them all together, which has been very compelling. So in terms of what we actually are planning on doing, so there is a gap in knowledge around reuse that we're trying to understand, and the not to put Sara on the spot here, but in terms of the gap when it comes to, there are some actually quite profound things that can occur when we aren't communicating together as people. And I don't know if there's anything more that you would like to any point you'd like to make here about sort of where your thinking was coming from in terms of the gap in knowledge.
You mean in terms of some of the stuff we were just talking about before the break? So
yeah.
Before we came over here.
Sorry, can you shout towards the screen?
Before we came over here, we were doing some presentations where we were talking about what was inspiring our thinking and practice and where we wanted to go next with TETRARCHS. And I was saying that when I moved from York to Mola, I joined with the biggest development-led archaeological practice in the UK. And Mola, like many organizations around the world, archaeology and non-archaeology, is involved in different forms of digital practice, which really promote how great the digital is involved in a lot of extracting materials and taking it into a space where nobody can have access to it beyond a very small group. Yes, it may be accessible to archaeologists, but even then I think you can argue that it depends on how specialized you are in archaeology. And I've been really, as many in the room are inspired by work coming out of critical science and technology studies, and especially recent work with critical artificial intelligence and those working at the intersections of AI and intersectional and feminist ethics, which is a space that I think there's a few more folks in archaeology now engaging with more meaningfully, but it's a bit of a black hole in the sense that there's a lot of critique in archaeology about how we're using our data, and not as many clear mechanisms to really push back against it. So I'll talk in a minute about the work packages and what underlies one of the work packages that I'm overseeing, which is about how you are building values and a kind of ethical, responsible, compassionate form of practice in everything that you do. And that's the gap that I'm interested in bridging through this work. Is that what you were looking for?
Yeah, thank you. I'm so glad I didn't even attempt to try to say that. So just the statistics. So it's a 3-year project. We've been awarded 1.5 million euros to do it. It's 8 work packages, and we've got 6 partner organizations representing 5 countries. Sara is the project leader, along with myself representing ADS, and within the Department of Archaeology, Colleen and James as well. Speak up, speak up. Sorry,
Speak up a little bit.
like, okay,
Louder.
are people saying I'm too quiet?
Even back.
And the partners that we have in the room with us right now. So our partners from Lithuania, from Slovenia, from Sweden, and we've got 2 partners from Belgium as well. We also have a range of cooperation partners, which is important. Most of the people on in this group are to do with museums, to make sure that we have some really solid museum partners that we can work with. And so just, I'm going to very quickly go over the work packages. Obviously, work package 1, management. I won't talk about that. And then work package 2. Do you want to just go ahead and pick up from work package 2?
The only thing I would say about work package 1, which I also have to oversee, is that we have embedded in it concern for inclusive design. So our communication plan and various communications outputs will have that emphasis on inclusive design and development at the core of it. For work package 2, which is focused on co-design and human-centered development of everything that happens in TETRARCHS, there are like 3 kind of key underlying principles of this work package. It informs everything. It informs every other work package that we're going to be discussing shortly. It is going to be grounded in a set of values, project values that we set together as a project team and then evolve over time. We've been working on another project on waters where we've given a first go at experimenting with doing this work of value setting, and then also building an evaluation framework around the values that you set. So we'll be a little bit further along, I think, in TETRARCHS to see how that works, and it's very much inspired by the design thinking and design justice work of Sasha Costanza-Chalk. So there's that values framework that underlies us, what we're doing. There's a concern for human and more than human-centered design, and there's a lot of research on that. So that will help to inform how all the other work packages are practicing their design and development. And then the third kind of key component of this work package is that whilst we have 3 audiences that are the main focus of TETRARCHS, I think we all recognize that not everybody is going to be represented in those audiences, and we're setting up what we're calling a critical friends user group. And these are individuals that are so purposely coming in to push as hard as they can on us to think, to make us think critically about whether we're actually meeting our values and how we're evolving those values, and you know, what are we missing? What are the gaps that we ourselves are creating through this work, sort of setting us up for the next phase of TETRARCHS in the future. and to be able to resolve other issues going forward, so.
Thank you. Which, and this is really critical. When we designed this project, I mean, typically when it comes to reuse, it's almost something that happens at the end. People are thinking about it at the end. So we decided to change that, and we started with understanding who wants to reuse our data, how they might want to reuse the data, what they want to use it for. We put that at the start, and that then is going to inform all of the different sort of, we're trying to create a kind of a life cycle, I guess. So work package 3, which is being led by our partners in Belgium. Basically, they are going to be taking what was learned in what we've learned in work package 2 and doing a whole range of work around standards. Because one of the big things that we realized when Sarah and I were having our conversation is that, you know, we're the ADS as an archive that needs to be accredited. We are constantly trying to work to standards that show we are an accredited archive, we're a trustworthy place to put your data, which is not necessarily what is needed for these kinds of other uses. So trying to expand when we are working to standards, broaden, well, what does that mean? What do standards mean? What can standards be, I guess? And I don't know if our partners would like to say anything about that. You're very welcome.
Yeah, so the work package 3, as always said, I don't know if they can hear me when I talk about this.
I hope so.
It's about indeed understanding the gaps in the existing metadata standards that hinder data reuse in archaeology, and with a specific focus on storytelling. So understanding what can be new metadata standards, what can they enable in terms of storytelling and archaeological data reuse. And that's definitely an iterative process where we will be getting feedback from other work packages and learning from the user cases about the new metadata standards that we will be trying to develop. When I say metadata standards, these are mostly standard data models, like inside of CRM, maybe an extension to CRM, I don't know, we have to see. And also controlled vocabularies, basically. So we will try to expand these existing standards in a direction where they start to afford archaeological data reuse better, and also archaeological like storytelling with this data. And that's basically perfect.
Thank you. So work package 4, which is being led by our partners from Slovenia, is looking at, so there are lots of different ways where we gather archaeological data. And in this case, we're focused on where our areas of expertise are. We have a lot of expertise within the partnership around airborne LiDAR, 3D scanning, digital drawing, and photography. So that's what we're going to focus on, even though, of course, there are many others. But the idea is understanding, you know, taking what we learned in work package 2 and work package 3, what's been modeled in work package 3, and trying to understand the data capture workflows that are often very opaque. We're not necessarily transparent about the decision-making process in the way that we capture and process a lot of this data. So work package 4 is very much about trying to figure out, are there ways where we can expand the way that we are capturing and organizing the data that we're creating in these workflows, these heavily digitally focused workflows that are basically, I think there are a lot of assumptions. If people are going to be reusing them, we need to understand how we can be more transparent with our assumptions. And I don't know if our Slovenian partners want to say anything more about what you're planning on doing.
I had a presentation prepared with You can do it shortly.
Oh, if you don't want to say anything, that's okay.
No, I just want to say that we are happy to lead our package 4 together with
Okay.
the University of York and the University. And of course, we will provide some admin support to our package leaders. For this with the data capture strategies, we will focus on data capture workflows into landscape side or artifacts level experiments. So these are 3 levels, and we will focus on mainly on airborne wildlife 3D scanning, digital drawing, and photography. About deliverables,
Yeah, thank you. Yes, and that brings up something else, that we're trying to look at different sort of levels. So looking at the landscape level, the site level, and the artifact level. So work package 5 is essentially being led by Lund in Sweden. Is basically doing similar things, but doing it in the field. So we're going to try and even dig differently. Being informed by what we've learned in work package 2, we're gonna change or augment the way that we're digging. And we have a whole range just through the partnership. We have existing sites where we're already working, where we already have sort of ongoing relationships where we can test. So we'll be talking tomorrow about what we're going to be doing first in terms of the first year, where we're going to go. But we are actually going to try to sort of ground truth reuse. I don't know. And also because we have these established relationships, we're going to be able to work with the sort of attempt to work with the local communities as well. James or Nico, I don't know if anyone wants to talk a little bit about.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's going to be very interesting and challenging because as many of you knows, archaeology, especially in the field, which has been very compartmental, very often, very close. Is that this is the opposite. So we try to open up and really include different stakeholders and co-producing information. So it'll be very exciting.
Thank you. Work package 6, repository experimentation, as you might imagine, it's the one that I'm leading. So basically, this is going to be, obviously, I work for the Archaeology Data Service. There is no better test bed to try to understand preservation workflows when it comes to archaeological data. They very kindly allowed me to basically work alongside understanding what we do in our workflows and how we might potentially change our workflows to incorporate what we're learning in the different work packages, at least assess how we might change them, even if changing them is something that is not possible as part of the project. We at least would know for our forward strategic planning how we might change them and not be so and have a wider perspective on how our data could be reused, because I think as I said before, we definitely are focused very much on making sure we're doing it correctly and not so much on who are we actually doing it for. So I'm hoping that it will inform our practice as well. Obviously, we have our own search interface from the ADS, but we're also going to be working with the other partners to look at different ways that we might take the data that we hold and visualize it in different ways and have it be interactive in different ways, and what possibilities that might open up for how, once again, we do things differently. So 7 is led by our partner in Lithuania. And so, of course, we need to be doing evaluation. as well. So this is looking at the different kinds of using a particular ISO standard, which we've trialed, which Christy Lee has trialed as part of her PhD work within the SIATA project, called quality in use. So it's meant to measure user experience, sort of software user experience, but in typical fashion, archaeologists, we take something that was meant for something slightly different and we use it for our own purposes. So we're going to be experimenting again with that. I don't know, Rimvidas, would you like to say anything about?
Yeah, I think that it's important that we will apply quality use approach, because really it enables us to look from the end user perspective. When I think about data archives, usually the archives are created by scholars and they created from scholar perspectives. And it means that it could be created a very good, very well archive, but from end user perspective, it looks as poor, as not understandable, or archive where I can't find anything for me, or I find the data, but I can't reuse this data for my needs. But actually, I think that it's very important to look from this perspective and let's draw new possibilities to understand how data archives work for different communities, professional, non-professional communities, how people use this data, and what barriers, what possibilities exist in this.
Okay, thank you. So finally, work package 8, which in my mind is sort of the outputs work package. So essentially, this is the taking the data model, actually creating an ontology so it can be used. Colleen's role, thank goodness, is we want to work directly with artists. We want to have artists embedded in this process. So Colleen will be working with the artists to make sure that we are listening to creative interests and how they want to use the data. There will be a new interface that is an experimental interface that will be developed. And then obviously ADS has to create guidance documents. So there will be guidance documents. It will be a guide to good practice on data reuse. So that, yeah, I don't know, Colleen, Sarah, if anybody else wants to say anything about sort of work package 8, is there anything else that you want to sort of raise about it?
The only other thing I would say, if you want to message Colleen, was that the digital residents or creative practitioners that will be doing some of this kind of testing to see how usable the data actually are for their own purposes. And then we'll also be doing user testing with communities that are associated with the different sites or materials that we are going to be looking through any other work packages. So this work package is really about bringing together people to robustly test our various outputs. So we'll see how that how that pans out. And then residencies, I think, is one thing that in the application, I think we got a lot of great feedback about, and there is a lot of literature around how creative practitioners attempt to use heritage repositories to find materials to utilize for inspiration in their work, and often have to give up, just Google it instead, because of the lack of quote-unquote symbolic metadata associated with these repositories to enable that kind of creative searching and practice.
I think that all I really want to say is that by saying artists, I think we're kind of putting it really up here. And while I'm actually trying to think really broadly. I'm thinking about romance authors, not that they're not artists, but it's like you want to write a really good Regency, it's like what was the toilet like? Maybe they don't have that in the romance. And maybe a board game designer as well, maybe something like that. And so I'm really open. If you have any really fantastic suggestions as well, we're totally willing to steal them. So please let us know.
Yeah, thank you. So that's it. That's all.
You're welcome.
Well, give me count.
So, yes, thank you. And, yeah, so we've got time for discussion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so yeah, just general.
Help us think
help
with
us
us a
think,
little bit
help
on
us
this.
think,
And so,
help
you know,
us think.
I just was thinking also this morning, when Adam Green gave a really great presentation about Mohenjo-Daro and to my analysis and visualization class. And he was like, okay, so I use Minecraft and, you know, the kids, and then we reconstructed some of these amazing palaces, and the kids are like, but where did they store the shoes? I'm like, I don't know. That's a great question. And so I just see this as, you know, a really lovely way to get people to interact and think with us as archaeologists.
So think with us.
Let's do it now.
No pressure.
No pressure.
Yeah, any thoughts, any concerns, any sort of encouragement?
Oh, Julian, no.
This should be a very dull one compared with what. The way you did that brilliant presentation, it looked like a very linear workflow. So I'm sure it's probably one of the things you're thinking about, because we all know from projects you can't just have one partner working in year one and the other partner's doing nothing and carrying on. So I wondered how you were going to allow some of the later things, as it were they going to be experimenting with things before work package 2 decides what they should be doing? Do you see what I mean?
So I can start. Work package 2, a lot of the co-design framework is going to be set up in the next 6 months. So right at the outset, in order to prepare others to be able to work within that framework as quickly as possible. And I think the work packages 4 and 5 are running, I might be saying the numbers wrong, so are running simultaneously, and are designed in a kind of iterative way. So because we're setting up a framework, we're doing the co-design and development. By co-designing within the team, alongside co-designing with potentially outside audiences. We just have a framework in place. That means that either work packages can start working together and independently right away. And then over the 3 years, we have it mapped out so that you're able to test it at several different times. So it is happening, even though it looks linear there. When you map it out in our diagram, which admittedly is more in our heads than in reality, it happens in a bit of a loop. So
Yeah.
Can see you.
It may be worth saying too, Julian, that when we were planning this out as well, we had specifically been thinking, oh, COVID might affect this, since it was a couple of years ago, and how can we work in a non-field based context as well. So part of the way that it was designed was to be reusing data in the worst case scenario where we couldn't do any primary work. So again, it informs it, because all the way through you can still be doing some of this design and development with some of the existing data sets. So. I did wonder if that was one. Ray gave a great presentation earlier about some of the work that was foundational to our thinking on some of this, and I wondered if you saying a bit more about that.
Yeah, I can. First, perhaps why did you also like in a lot of work packages? Also, there's for instance in work package 3, it's a real iterative process. For instance, there's a like dance study from evolve here. Or I think in collaboration with people like it's Omega S development, like in web-based interface. But there's a lot of also in the metadata standard development, but also in this development of web-based interface, there's a lot of iteration where we get feedback from different work packages. So it may be like it may look linear, but it's definitely not like that. And coming to what Sara was saying. So one thing that inspired helped us to help a little bit, I think, Molly and Sarah to develop the idea further, was something at least that inspired me, and I think maybe Sara and James as well, as this experiment we did with Side of CRM, annotating. I don't know if all of you will go into that article. It's an open archaeology about annotating some of the archaeological texts from Chateauneuf with Side of CRM. To see how metadata standards express or do not express, what do they afford in terms of archaeological knowledge representation. So we bumped into it was an eye-opener for us. We did only a few, very small corpus, but it was an eye-opener for us to see that existing metadata standards, although we know it's a true experiment thing like that, to see that the expertise of CRM as expected was limited, and some of the more interpretative archaeological knowledge, or especially archaeological diaries, notebooks that are produced on sites, which show, for instance, frustration from excavators of emotions, it was not possible to express them through existing ontological vocabulary. So that was, it's actually really interesting because archaeological diaries have a very interesting storytelling component. It's indeed a story. And that was also an eye, and it was an inspiration for us in this project, as what I was also talking about this morning. So it's important to realize that metadata standards are just representations like any other. They have affordances. So they enable and disable certain things, they enact certain knowledge while leaving others behind. So it's important to realize that fact, and then to see that there can be no perfect metadata standards, but at least we can be aware of what they do, their agency. It's all about that we can do it with awareness. So that's one aspect. And another thing that we talked this morning was also the tension between global top-down metadata standards. That's of course important and necessary for interoperability of data. But then you have the bottom-up needs, the local needs on archaeology projects, and there's always this tension between what is imposed for interoperability, because you need some sort of standard. But then this comes from bottom up, what is needed locally. So this tension from global, between global and local, global standards and local needs is also something that inspired us in this project to see how we can approach that in archaeology and how we can produce something meaningful or from that dialectic. Basically, that dynamism is very interesting. So that's basically what we talked about this morning.
That's really interesting. Thanks for your thing, and Jeremy, to see it's online, will remember this as well. Because right from the sort of early days of the year 25 years ago, we really tried to encourage people to deposit their site notebooks with us rather than storing it for records. And we failed miserably because no one was willing to actually archive their personal thoughts and during the excavation. I think it goes back to something that Ian Hodder, I think, once wrote about, saying that sort of one of the impacts of computers on archaeology was to sort of make it so objective that the data was just seen to be more context sheets and so forth, and the site notebooks were pushed aside almost as if ever. But I totally agree, and so yeah, if you can sort of address that challenge of the way of capturing some of that information that's in those notebooks, that would be really good.
Yeah, and on one side we had indeed that article is in there, James, I think we can correct me if I'm wrong, but also that there's now some understanding of big data or this data flooding and that overwhelms a lot of data. It's some sort of proxy for neutrality, objectivity, as you say, and the bigger the data gets, the bit more objective it becomes. Whereas we realize actually that we just get flooded by structured data and it can only represent so much. So it's like really, there's a very important thing to do there about how we structure our data, while some in archaeology and elsewhere are believing that the more data we have, the more visual we become. Whereas it doesn't appear to be like that, because a lot is being structured through these standards, and we see that these standards are far from being neutral. So it's really interesting to have that take, and then that's a big challenge for the project.
Can the online people hear the discussion at all? Apparently not.
It's
okay.
Yeah,
Thank you,
exactly.
Sara.
The mic is pretty
Yes.
good. The mic
Yes.
is pretty good.
Oh, and it's even interesting. Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Other
Questions?
questions, thoughts?
I just briefly to speak to, I'm sure this came up in the paper and what Julian says about the diaries. It's surveillance as well, though, and I think that that is the other side of this kind of this coin for data and big data gathering, and we need to be thinking really deeply about what privacy really, and does our digital signature, does my mouthing off to an unnamed project director in my in my site diary, does that deserve to die, or is it part of the archive? Is it something that it needs to be filtered out, to be censored out, or is it seen as a legitimate, output? And so I mean, always keeping an awareness of that, and always keeping awareness of who is structuring the project, as we are all, well, European-ish or white around the table, and I think that's important to point out. But I think Nico had something to say.
Yeah, a follow-up. It's very interesting. Also, for example, at Channel in 2015, there was done an experiment in which they were recording archaeologists, as Charles said. We're working a bit with that part in Lund as well. And it was interesting to see, also involving Åsa Berg, that she's been working a lot in this reflexivity framework, that archaeologists, when they were actually recorded, when they were decided to record, they were staging a lot. So they were talking to other people. Like during the excavation, they were really changing entirely the way they were expressing their thoughts, because they knew they were going to be, in a way, that would have been impossible. So what I'm saying is that the risk is to lose that natural freedom in a way when actually you write your diary, and you can sometimes free also, place your frustration in this sense. So we need to be very careful in the way we decide to structure this sort of information. Actually, all this information needs to be structured. It doesn't necessarily. So it's a good question.
Actually, just to respond to that as well, there was another project earlier than that, but he had binaural microphones, and so you wouldn't even know he was recording you coming around before that. But we're also dealing with the other project I'm working on, the Avebury project, where I see Fran is online, so wonderful postdoc Fran. But there is a whole body of notebooks, actually, written by Keeler, written by various people, and there is some racist stuff in there, and there is some not nice stuff in there as well. And so coming up with ways to address that within the archive, I think is really important too. And people that have been working on this, I'm sure, know a lot more about it than I do.
Good question.
Yeah.
We've got a question for Ulla Rajala. Do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Yes, thank you for very interesting presentation. I was just wondering how you are going to bridge the difference between highly detailed organization of national archaeologies in the countries like Sweden, where everything is meticulously defined to the last word in the database, to this very experimental art approach. Are you trying to change the national practices as well in the process?
Yes, yes. Well, the thing is, we need, before changing the entire system, which is not the aim of this project, of course, we need to investigate how these things impact the way archaeologists use all this. I mean, Riksvantikvarien method, for example, is definitely open very much. I mean, we collaborate a lot with Stedigar, which is an infrastructure Swedish infrastructure for digital archaeology. So the result of this project, of course, we interact with Sverigard and through Sverigard through Riksarkivarieämbetet. So the goal is not to change the structure as it is. Also, I would say it's already changing because if you take Intrasys, for example, which is a Swedish system, GIS system for archiving the data, it's very detailed, granular, but every museum uses it as they please. So it's not like in Norway, but actually they have a very, very structured way of using it. So what I'm saying is that there is definitely room for entering, adding, and also Riksarkivarieämbetet is looking into web semantic, into control vocabularies with Åsa Larsson, with Marcus Smith. So, for example, bringing in new ontologies is definitely the way for eventually reorganizing data that we already have in Sweden or rearranging them according to different schemas. So yes, I'm very positive. And we'll see.
That's good to know.
One more question.
One time for one more question. You're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, sir. Valeria.
And we just have one more question, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the values. I remember reading a little bit about the project and being interested in how what makes it possible to share different narratives. Are these like bigger human experiences or bigger emotions that helps the public connect to heritage, or that helps? So I was just wondering if this is something that you're going to look into extracting it from existing metadata, or is it something that is going to happen when you look at new ways of digging, creating, or capturing that?
Good question. I mean, I don't know how best to answer this question other than to start by on the point about extracting it from existing metadata. In my experience, although others in the room might disagree, as soon as we start looking at the metadata, I think it's going to become very obvious that there is very little to extract from it that is anything beyond this very structured, incredibly devoid of symbolism, emotion, you know, everything that makes us human. And so I don't imagine we're going to encounter a lot of that already there. There will be values embedded in them that relate to, you know, colonial objectives from the past and beliefs in objectivity, etc. So there'll be a specific set of values that which I think many of us are already aware of, and that's why we're trying to push back against. In terms of how values like emerge and are taken into account going forward, the first step is that we'll work as a project team to kind of situate ourselves, like what are the values that we're bringing to this project, so that we're transparent about who we are and what biases we're coming with. And as Colleen was saying there, I think recognizing that there are some other things that we may want to be like conscientiously identifying at the outset. Privacy is a big deal for us and others, and therefore we want to design our work as a group in a way that respects that. So we'll do a first round of getting on the table what we are bringing to the project. And then as we're doing also in the Unplugged Waters, it's towards the National Collections and project that I'm working on with Julian and Holly and 20 plus other institutional partners. We'll follow a similar model, although this one will have learned a bit more, and so we may be able to do things differently. Whereas new audiences and new stakeholders get involved in the project, we'll bring in some of their thinking, and we'll also be doing some testing in the field. And I guess the thing that when we first started talking about this 6 years ago, and I can remember having conversations with very many people where they said, how are you ever going to do this? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. What are you going to do when you get in the field to demonstrate how value can be embedded in the data that you're collecting? I think there is no easy answer to some of these questions, and what is so great about this is that finally we have the people, the money, and the opportunity to actually test it out. So it's not a great answer, but I don't actually know what we're going to see, but the intent is that we are always very upfront and transparent about what we represent. So that
discussion going forward, and that we also know where the weaknesses and the holes are, so that somebody in the future can respond to that. And by hopefully filling in those holes and gaps. But maybe somebody else has a better answer. Grappling with a lot of these issues in a different way, but maybe still complementary way in some of the work that she's been doing. So maybe you want to say more.
I actually wanted to read Fran's question real fast as the very super duper last one. I wondered how or whether the project is thinking through or incorporating skills teaching into some of the work packages, i.e. something around the understanding how facilitating reuse is not just to do with the design of an archive or the metadata, paradata, making it searchable, findable, but the skills of the users. God, that's a good question. Best practices.
I actually didn't hear any of the
Sorry.
first part, but it was so fast.
Sorry.
I need to answer that question. Maybe
Well, I think-
somebody else.
It's built in, James said when he saw that is basically building in best practices, guides to a lot of what we're doing.
Yeah, so it's linked to the transparency of the approach, repeatability, isn't it? And then the fact that we're trying to, you know.
Sorry, maybe I do understand. Sorry, I'm just trying to read it on the screen.
Yeah, sorry, this is the last, that's the last bit there.
The work package 8 has built into it different types of what we call user guides, but I'm not sure that that's the best.
No.
But for different types, so for IT teams that work in museums and in cultural heritage institutions that may have to be grappling with this metadata, for general users and with the so-called wider public users, and there's at least one other type of guide. I hope I'm answering.
I think it is to a degree about understanding the skills that the users are bringing with them, and that's a separate thing from like what they might want to learn might be different from what might be at odds with the skills that they have.
Although I guess you're making the argument that the whole project is underlain by a co-design approach, there would always be an effort to understand skills.
Yes.
Through that co-design.
So yes.
Your answer is yes.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you for all the really great questions and discussion. So thanks, Polly. Thank you.
We'll be in the CAA, right? So
Yes, so we're gonna be, once again, we've gone a bit mad considering we've only just started, but we have a session coming up at this CAA Computer Applications and Archaeology Conference, which is going to be the 50th anniversary conference in Amsterdam. So it's going to be really well attended. Wonderful conference. And we've had 18 papers submitted. Submitted to the session. So clearly people want to talk about reuse. So let's keep doing that.
Thank you. What's next week, James? What's the next digital lunch?
Paula, I think. Paula Derridas, who is linked to Nicola's PhD student who's working on a system called AIR, and she'll be presenting that and talking a bit about how that, which is linked in actually.
What is AIR?
What is AIR, Nico?
It's an acronym for Archaeological Interactive
PhD supervisor fail. It's an online recording system in Omeka S that is designed, well, an online system for handling all of our records in Omeka.
For data use.
For data use.
It's based on Omeka S and 3D, so combine basically 3D web visualization with advanced digital recording and archive.
And annotation, right?
And annotation and reporting, yes.
So we hope to see you again next week. Thank you very much.